Welcome to another episode of Into the Pot, the weekly show where I review different pieces of media, what they meant to me, and how they've changed and added flavor to the stew of my life. Today we're talking about Resident Evil Requiem. As always, I'll start with a spoiler free look at what I thought was good, then what I thought was bad, and finish off with spoilers to discuss the themes and details that resonated with me. With that in mind, let's start off with the good. Okay, first off, Resident Evil Requiem is by far one of my favorite games of the entire year. It has truly been a wonderful experience. I love this game so much. And I think one of the most important aspects about this game is how it reminds me how much I love the Resident Evil formula. The sort of maze, Metroidvania style survival horror where you're going through locations, collecting different keys and objects, and expanding your world, expanding which rooms you can go through, and seeing how you navigate all these corridors of horror and everything else like that. Resident Evil Requiem perfects that formula with the grace parts, and with Leon, the action of Resident Evil 4 is just front and center, and it becomes such an amazing game to play. I loved the horror elements, I loved the action parts, and it really just felt like a merging of two of the best parts about the Resident Evil series, and I cannot hype this game enough. I think it's totally worth all the praise that it's getting, and it was such a fun time. I gotta tell you, when I started playing the grace parts with hiding in the shadows and using the light to my advantage, I thought that would be a little bit tedious to go through, but I fell in love with it. It's such a fun, short, brief part of the game where, you really navigate these environments strategically. And then being in the sanatorium for Rhodes Hill has been a wonderful experience to just go through as Grace and clear out all the little intricacies and rooms. And it just like the gameplay of Resident Evil Requiem, I love so much. It makes me want to go play the other Resident Evil games that I didn't have a chance to play. I've played two, I've played four, both the remakes and a little bit of the originals, but I've skipped out on Resident Evil 3 remake. I I played Resident Evil 5 and 6 at the time, but I skipped out on Resident Evil 7 and 8, only playing a little bit of them. But this game makes me want to go back and actually play them because the gameplay was incredible. The graphics were also so sublime. The Resident Evil engine, I don't know what the heck did they do with that, but it makes the game so fluid, runs so well, and the action set pieces just, run so fluidly that I'm like, oh my God, even on my computer, like I can run these settings on high. And I know a lot of people are playing on the Switch too, which to see it run on the Switch 2 is incredible. It's like, wow, this game is a triple A game just running so flawlessly on such a portable piece of hardware. So I think just like kudos to Capcom for this game. Everything about this game I love so dearly. The dialogue, the voice acting was phenomenal. Grace was such a great character. I really fell in love with her. She was just like so scared and terrified, and it felt so real and authentic. It didn't feel campy. Resident Evil usually feels campy with its dialogue, and Leon does feel a little bit silly with his one liners, but Grace felt so grounded and so real. And the overall narrative was like strong, considering that Resident Evil games, their narrative is like second place. Their gameplay is always first place. Narrative is not that important, but this one had a great narrative too. And so much so that I did a whole freaking video about it on my video essay channel, considering trauma. So I cannot talk about it enough about how much I like it. I love the environments, sanatorium, and even the ruined Raccoon City was like super cool to see. Everything about this game just oozes a bunch of creativity and a bunch of love. And I really enjoyed this game. I will 100% say this is my favorite game of the year so far. Now that the good is out of the way, let's talk about the bad. And now there isn't that much that is bad about the game, but I will say the difference between Rhodes Hill to going to the ruined Raccoon City, I think for me, that was a little bit of a bump because the environment of the ruined Raccoon City and fighting all those zombies in the action setting is good, it's wonderful, but it felt kind of drab. I think, just like the vibrancy and the cool aesthetic of the sanatorium was like, oh, cool to walk through these hallways as Grace and do all this moving around and hiding in the shadows was really cool. And then you just get to this deserted wasteland area. And although I think it felt a little long at parts, it didn't have the same flow that I felt with the sanatorium in Rhodes Hill until we get to the RPD building. Once we get to the RPD building and move on, I think the whole Raccoon City part it wasn't as beautiful as the rest of the game, but it was still a blast to play. I think there was a bunch of great combat moments when Leon's fighting the other chainsaw guy and they're like trying to get each other. Like there's so many cool action pieces set there, but I think the environment is a little bit of a bummer. And then also like one thing that I found that was bad, and I think this is just my own personal take, is like I was terrified of the game. It was a pretty scary Resident Evil game, but by the end of it, where the liquors come out, I think I had saved up all my ammunition and everything else that from the Raccoon City area beyond, like it didn't feel difficult. The big boss fights, the final boss, everything felt kind of easy. I had saved enough Requiem shots for everyone, so I just kind of blazed through all of those things and it felt kind of easy. And I was playing on the standard modern difficulty, which I don't think that it was too easy. It was definitely the perfect difficulty in the beginning. By the end, it got a little easy. And I'm excited to dive into it, play Insanity, because this game is so fun. And I would just love to replay this game because I'm feeling kind of nostalgic, knowing that I just blazed through this game. But finally, let's talk about those themes and details that resonated with me. And beware, there will be spoilers ahead. So, I will say I like so much the narrative about Grace being such a terrified main character and Leon suffering from the T virus because, you'll see in my video essay, but it really shows about trauma between the mind and the body. And although Grace is terrified and she's very scared, she is still physically competent and she's able to run, navigate all these things. She goes through crazy freaking things and she's able to, defeat the shadow monster, the girl with the light at the end and stuff. And it's like such a tremendous like feat for her to be scared out of her mind, but still physically competent. And then for Leon, on the other hand, like he's able to be mentally sound. He's like, I'm not phased by any of this. This is crazy. But, a job's a job. Shoot, 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 bang, bang. Everything is fine. But throughout the game, even though he's like physically strong, like he deteriorates over time. And then by the end of it, you're like, oh crap, like he cannot function anymore. He's still there. He says he's like $1,000,000, but he's definitely not. And so I think seeing those two sides of the trauma was very great. I liked so much that they incorporated that he was suffering from the T virus and that lingering trauma that it brings. I think that was a very interesting way to include sort of the past sort of haunting him and both physically and a little bit mentally when he gets to the RPD building. So I really like that aspect about the game. And I think it's probably the type of story that resonates with me the most to see how these characters change throughout the game. And because there were two characters who, were off on their own adventures, once they come together and really rely on each other, you can see such a perfect duo forming. And that makes it feel so wholesome. I think they were a great team. I think Leon and Grace were great characters. And I love this game, right? I think theme wise, I think the general villains were always, Resident Evil villains. Xeno was like, who is this imitation Albert Wesker? For a time, I thought it was Albert Wesker, and I was like, what? And I was like, is he not dead? What is happening? So I think the overall plot and the narrative is like, I don't really know what's happening. And Victor Gideon was like the scientist, and by the end, I was like, he's the final boss, and I'm like, he felt a little bit underwhelming, like he didn't feel like he should have been the final boss. And then Zeno was like, oh, is he gonna be the final boss? Because he's like the Wesker type, and he was like not. And so it's like it's a little weird. I think the last act of the game was like, oh, I don't know what's the big threat. I think the big threat for this one was very internal. Like it was Grace and Leon fighting against their own demons. And I like that a lot about the story, but the actual fights, I don't really know. Like Leon fighting the giant spider, the plant. It's cool. Feels kind of out of left field, but it was still cool. It was still fun to play. I think the biggest boss fights that I really liked was the shadow monster, the girl with Grace. Such a great, overall story with that character and how Grace navigates this whole experience. And then when Emily turns into the monster, it's like the whole time I'm like, oh my God, the shadow monster is just Emily, right? This is the other girl that was in the cells. And so that was a great way. And then when Mr. X shows up again, you're like fighting him with Leon. I think those were like the standout monsters where I was like, this is amazing. The rest of it was like not as great, but still wonderful. Like I would still highly, highly recommend this game to anyone. And just that last moment about the ending and how everything is hopeful. Emily's alive. She gets her eyesight back. Grace is so much more confident. She's talking on the phone with Leon. Leon and Sherry are now cured. Like it's just such a hopeful, optimistic ending. And to be honest, I don't really remember the other Resident Evil endings, but this one just made me feel so much hope for the future. And I'm so excited to play the next Resident Evil game. And I want to dive into 7. I want to dive into 8. I want to replay 2. I want to play 3. I want to replay 4. Like it just makes me love the Resident Evil formula, especially the upgrading of the guns, the upgrading of your skills, and just like replaying all of that while also keeping such a tight environment and really fun gameplay loop. So, with all that in mind, I would gladly give Resident Evil Requiem a score of 10 out of 10. It is the greatest game that I've played in a while, and it just scratched all the right itches for me. Like, it was so good. I love the Resident Evil formula, and I'm a diehard Resident Evil fan now. Like, I want to dive into the series way more. And I know I love Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 2 and stuff, but I just want to replay these games because now I see so much comfort and so much fun that I could have with them. So there you have it. I gave you my thoughts and opinions about what Resident Evil Requiem meant to me. And now I want to hear what you all think about it down in the comments. Do you agree or disagree with my opinions and the general consensus about it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like and subscribing for more. As always, check the links in the description for my main video essay channel and my Patreon to support the channel and recommend media for me to review next. Thank you to all my current Patreon members whose memberships keep this channel afloat. I am so grateful for your support and for you being here with me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.